Richard Ashworth leans back in his leather chair on the 14th floor of Helion Technologies and says the words that will cost his company $412 million. "I don't know who let you through the front door, but this isn't a charity program. Security will escort you out." He doesn't look at her when he says it. He's looking at his phone, scrolling through emails, as if the woman standing in front of his desk in a pressed navy blazer with a Stanford lanyard still clipped to her bag is not even worth the courtesy of eye contact. Nadine Carter stands perfectly still. She is 29 years old. She weighs 118 pounds. She holds in her name a patent portfolio worth more than every piece of furniture, every server rack, every square foot of glass and steel in the building she's standing in. And she has been employed at Helion Technologies for exactly 4 hours and 37 minutes. She doesn't argue. She doesn't cry. She reaches into her bag, removes the employee badge they gave her that morning, the one with her photo laminated beneath the Helion logo, and places it gently on the edge of his desk. "You'll hear from my attorney," she says. Richard Ashworth laughs. Actually laughs. A sound like ice cracking in a glass. "Sweetheart," he says, still not looking up, "I am the attorney." That was Monday, October 14th. By Friday, October 18th, Richard Ashworth will be standing in a boardroom filled with people who used to respect him, watching a projection screen display a licensing termination notice that effectively renders Helion Technologies' entire product line illegal to manufacture, sell, or distribute. By the following Monday, the company's stock will drop 19% in pre-market trading. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back. Let's go back to where this actually starts. Dr. Marcus Carter filed his first patent at 26 years old. It was 1998. He was working out of a converted garage in Richmond, Virginia, surrounded by circuit boards, soldering equipment, and a 3-year-old daughter who liked to sit on the floor near his feet and sort resistors by color. Marcus was a materials engineer, a graduate of Howard University with a doctorate from MIT, and he had spent the better part of 4 years developing something that nobody in the industry believed was possible: a proprietary substrate architecture for semiconductor chips that increased processing efficiency by a factor of 3 while reducing thermal output by 60%. The patent was filed under the name Carter Applied Sciences. It was his company, his and his wife Evelyn's, a 2-person operation run out of a garage with a second-hand fax machine and a filing cabinet that stuck on the second drawer. The industry ignored him for 2 years. Then Intel called, then Qualcomm. Then a small startup in Austin, Texas called Helion Technologies, founded by a 24-year-old MIT dropout named Gregory Ashworth, Richard's older brother. Gregory Ashworth was not like Richard. Gregory was quiet, meticulous, curious. He flew to Richmond personally. He sat in Marcus Carter's garage for 3 hours, reviewing the substrate architecture, asking questions, taking notes in a leather-bound journal. When he left, he told Marcus that he believed this technology could change the industry. He was right. The licensing agreement they signed was unusual. Marcus retained full ownership of the patent. Helion Technologies received an exclusive license to use the substrate architecture in their products, but the license contained a clause, paragraph 14, subsection C, that most people skimmed over and forgot about. The license was contingent upon the Carter family maintaining an active, good faith relationship with Helion Technologies. If that relationship was severed without cause by Helion, the license terminated automatically. No notice period, no arbitration, immediate termination. Gregory Ashworth agreed to this clause because he trusted Marcus Carter, because he believed in partnerships built on mutual respect, because he understood that Marcus was giving Helion something irreplaceable, and the least he could offer in return was the assurance that Marcus and his family would always be treated with dignity. That was 23 years ago. Helion Technologies grew from a 12-person startup into a $4 billion semiconductor company. Every product they made, every chip they designed, every contract they signed with automotive manufacturers and aerospace companies and consumer electronics giants, all of it was built on Marcus Carter's substrate architecture, the Carter patent. Patent number US 6,024,318. The foundation beneath the empire. Marcus Carter died on a Tuesday in April 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. He was 52. The patent passed to his daughter, Nadine, along with the licensing agreement, along with every clause, including paragraph 14, subsection C. Nadine was 23 years old, finishing her own doctorate in electrical engineering at Stanford. She had grown up sorting resistors by color on her father's garage floor. She had co-authored her first academic paper at 17. She understood the technology better than anyone alive because her father had taught her every detail, every nuance, every innovation he had made over 20 years of quiet, relentless work. Gregory Ashworth attended Marcus's funeral. He stood beside Evelyn Carter and told her that Helion would always honor the agreement, that Nadine would always have a place at the company if she wanted one, that Marcus's legacy was safe.
Stand up. Now.
8 months later, Gregory Ashworth suffered a stroke. He survived, but he stepped down as CEO. The board appointed his younger brother Richard as interim CEO. The interim became permanent, and everything Gregory had built, every relationship, every principle, every handshake, agreement honored in good faith, began to erode. Nadine Carter arrives at Helion Technologies headquarters in Austin, Texas on Monday, October 14th at 7:48 in the morning. She is early. She is always early. Her mother taught her that. You show up before they expect you, Evelyn used to say, so they can never say you weren't there. The building is a monument to controlled ambition. 32 floors of tinted glass and brushed steel, a lobby with polished concrete floors, and a reception desk carved from a single piece of white marble. Nadine walks through the revolving door, carrying a leather messenger bag that belonged to her father. The brass clasp is tarnished. The strap is worn soft from years of use. Inside the bag, along with her laptop and a folder of onboarding documents, is a small framed photograph of Marcus Carter standing in his garage, holding a circuit board in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other, grinning like a man who knows something the world hasn't figured out yet. She presents herself at reception. The woman behind the marble desk, whose name tag reads Tanya, looks at her for a long moment before asking if she has an appointment. Nadine says she's a new hire. She gives her name. Tanya types it into the system, frowns, types it again, then picks up the phone and calls someone in human resources. There is a brief conversation that Nadine can't fully hear, but she catches the words, "Are you sure?" spoken twice. Tanya hangs up and produces a visitor badge, not an employee badge, a visitor badge, the kind they give to delivery drivers and maintenance contractors. HR will send someone down, Tanya says. She doesn't smile. Nadine clips the visitor badge to her blazer and waits. She waits for 22 minutes. She watches other employees arrive, scan their badges, walk through the turnstiles without hesitation. A man in a golf shirt and khakis walks past carrying a box of donuts and nods at Tanya, who smiles and waves him through without checking anything. At 8:10, a woman from HR appears. Her name is Margaret Holloway. She is in her mid-40s, efficient, professional, carrying a tablet and a company welcome packet in a glossy folder with the Helion logo embossed on the front. She shakes Nadine's hand, apologizes for the wait, and explains that there was a system hiccup with her onboarding credentials. Happens all the time, Margaret says, though her eyes suggest it doesn't happen all the time. They take the elevator to the 7th floor. Margaret walks Nadine through the standard orientation: emergency exits, break rooms, restroom locations, the cafeteria on the 3rd floor that serves surprisingly good Thai food on Wednesdays. She introduces Nadine to the team she'll be joining, the Advanced Materials Division, a group of 14 engineers responsible for developing next-generation substrate technologies. The team lead is a man named James Chen. He is 41 years old, born in Taipei, educated at Caltech, and he is one of exactly 3 people at Helion Technologies who fully understands the significance of the Carter patent. When Margaret introduces Nadine as the new senior research engineer, James Chen's face does something complicated. His eyes widen slightly. His mouth opens, then closes. He extends his hand and holds hers for a beat longer than normal. "Dr. Carter," he says. Not Miss Carter, not Nadine. Dr. Carter. He knows who she is. "Welcome to Helion, your father's work." He pauses. "Your father's work is the reason all of us are here." Margaret Holloway looks confused by this statement, but moves on with the orientation. She sets Nadine up at a workstation near the window, logs her into the company system with temporary credentials, and tells her that her permanent employee badge will be ready by end of day. "If you need anything," Margaret says, "don't hesitate to ask." She leaves. Nadine unpacks her bag. She places her father's photograph on the desk, next to the monitor. She opens her laptop. She begins reviewing the project files James Chen has shared with her. For 93 minutes, everything is fine. She reads through technical specifications, cross-references them with her own research notes, identifies 3 areas where the current substrate design could be improved with modifications she's been developing at Stanford. She is deep in concentration when the office door opens and a voice cuts through the room like a blade. Who authorized this hire? Richard Ashworth stands in the doorway of the Advanced Materials Division. He is 51 years old, 6'2", wearing a charcoal suit that costs more than most people's monthly rent. His hair is silver at the temples. His jaw is set. His eyes sweep the room and land on Nadine with the precision of a targeting system. James Chen stands up from his desk. Richard, she was approved through the standard hiring process. The board reviewed her credentials and I didn't ask about the process. I asked who authorized it. His voice is flat, controlled, but everyone in the room can hear the current running beneath it. James says, Gregory recommended the hire before he stepped down. The board confirmed it in September. It's documented. Richard takes 3 steps into the room. He stops at Nadine's workstation. He looks at her. He looks at the photograph of her father on the desk. He looks at her temporary credentials on the screen. He does not see a woman with a doctorate from Stanford, 4 published papers in peer-reviewed journals, and a patent portfolio worth more than the building he's standing in. He sees something else entirely, and what he sees makes him angry.
Ready?
Stand up, he says. Nadine looks at him. She doesn't stand. She doesn't flinch. She holds his gaze with the same quiet steadiness her father had, the steadiness of someone who has been underestimated so many times that it has become a kind of armor. I said stand up. I'm the CEO of this company. She stands. Not because he told her to, because she chooses to. Because she wants him to see her at her full height, 5'6", 118 pounds, looking up at a man who has every advantage the world can offer and still feels threatened by her presence. What's your name? He asks. Doctor. Nadine Carter. He blinks at the doctor. A micro-expression crosses his face, contempt mixed with disbelief, like someone has told a joke he doesn't find funny. And what exactly do you think you're going to be doing here, Dr. Carter? Improving your substrate architecture, that's what I was hired to do. He laughs, that ice and glass laugh. Improving it. He turns to James Chen. James, is this a joke? You brought in someone off the street to improve the technology that's been running this company for 20 years? She's not off the street, Richard. I don't care who she is. He turns back to Nadine. Look, I'm sure you're very enthusiastic, but this isn't a diversity initiative. This is a $4 billion company. We don't hand out positions because someone's DEI checklist needs filling. The room goes silent. 14 engineers, some of the most brilliant minds in semiconductor technology, sit frozen at their desks. Nobody moves. Nobody speaks. The air conditioning hums. A phone vibrates on someone's desk. Nadine's hands are at her sides. Her left hand trembles, just slightly, just enough that she presses her fingers against her thigh to still them. I was hired based on my qualifications, she says evenly. My credentials are in the system. My work speaks for itself. Richard Ashworth reaches past her and picks up the framed photograph from her desk. He holds it up, examines it, sets it back down face first. Clean out your desk, he says. I want you out of the building in 20 minutes. Richard, James Chen's voice carries a warning that Richard either doesn't hear or doesn't care about. This isn't a discussion, James. Richard turns and walks toward the door. He pauses at the threshold. He doesn't turn around. And someone call HR. Make sure there's no record of this hire in the system. I want it clean. He leaves. The silence in the room lasts 11 seconds. It feels like an hour. James Chen crosses the room to Nadine's desk. His face is ashen. He speaks quietly, urgently, like a man who can see a hurricane on the horizon and knows that the people around him have no idea what's coming. Nadine, listen to me. Don't leave yet. Let me call the board. Let me call Gregory. This can be fixed. Nadine picks up her father's photograph. She wipes a smudge from the glass with her thumb. She looks at her father's face, that grin, that confidence, that knowing. She places the photograph in her bag. My father told me something when I was 14, she says. He said, Nadine, never beg someone to respect you. Respect given under pressure isn't respect. It's fear wearing a mask. She zips her bag. I'm not going to beg. You don't understand, James says. If you leave like this, if they terminate you without cause. He trails off, but his eyes are saying what his mouth won't. He knows about paragraph 14. He knows about subsection C. He is one of 3 people in the company who has read the actual licensing agreement, and right now, he is watching the foundation of a $4 billion empire crack in real time. I understand perfectly, Nadine says. She takes her visitor badge, the one they gave her instead of a real badge, and places it on the desk. Goodbye, James. She walks through the office. 14 engineers watch her go. Some look away, some look at their screens. One woman, a junior engineer named Sarah Park, meets Nadine's eyes and mouths the words, I'm sorry. Nadine nods. She takes the elevator to the lobby. She walks past Tanya at the reception desk, who doesn't look up. She pushes through the revolving door and steps into the October sunlight. The air is warm, Texas warm. The kind of warmth that sits on your skin like a second layer. She stands on the sidewalk for a moment, holding her father's bag, looking up at 32 floors of glass and steel. Then she takes out her phone and calls a number she has had saved for 6 years, since the day her father died, and a probate attorney handed her a folder containing the most valuable intellectual property in the semiconductor industry. Mr. Whitfield, she says when the call connects. It's Nadine Carter. I need you to file the termination notice. A pause on the other end. Are you sure, Nadine? Once we file, there's no grace period. The license terminates immediately. I'm sure. Can you tell me what happened? Nadine looks at the building one more time. She thinks about her father in his garage, sorting through circuits at 2 in the morning, building something extraordinary with nothing but his mind and his hands. She thinks about Gregory Ashworth sitting in that garage, treating her father like an equal, like a partner, like a human being. She thinks about Richard Ashworth telling her to clean out her desk without ever asking what she knew, what she could do, what she had built. They broke the agreement, she says simply. File it. She hangs up. She walks to her rental car in the visitor parking lot, the lot where they put people who don't belong, and she drives back to her hotel. Behind her, the glass tower of Helion Technologies gleams in the morning sun, oblivious, magnificent, and already falling. The termination notice arrives at Helion Technologies' legal department at 2:47 p.m. on Tuesday, October 15th. It is a 17-page document, precisely worded, citing paragraph 14, subsection C, of the exclusive licensing agreement between Carter Applied Sciences and Helion Technologies. It states that Helion Technologies has severed its good faith relationship with the Carter family by terminating Dr. Nadine Carter's employment without cause on her first day, and that as a result, the exclusive license to use patent US 6,024,318 and all derivative patents in the Carter portfolio, 17 patents in total, is immediately and irrevocably terminated. The document lands on the desk of Helion's general counsel, a woman named Patricia Voss, who reads it twice, turns noticeably pale, and immediately walks to Richard Ashworth's office on the 14th floor. She doesn't knock. She opens the door, closes it behind her, and places the document on his desk. Read this, she says. Richard picks it up. He reads the first page. He reads the second page. He flips to the clause citation on page 7 and reads paragraph 14, subsection C, which he has never read before in his life, because he inherited the company from his brother and never bothered to review the foundational agreements that made it possible. What is this? He asks. This is the end of the company, Patricia says. She isn't being dramatic. She is being precise. Explain. Patricia sits down across from him. She folds her hands. She speaks the way lawyers speak when they are delivering news that they know will change everything. Every product we manufacture uses the Carter substrate architecture. Every chip, every board, every component. It's not a peripheral technology. It's the core technology. Without the license, we can't legally produce, sell, or distribute any of our current product lines. We have active contracts with 14 major clients, including 3 automotive manufacturers and the Department of Defense. If the license is terminated, we are in breach of every single one of those contracts. Richard stares at her. This is one patent. It's 17 patents, Richard, and they're not peripheral, they're foundational. Everything we've built for 23 years sits on top of this architecture. You can't just engineer around it. Our entire R&D infrastructure is built on Carter's designs. To develop an alternative from scratch would take, conservatively, 4 to 6 years and cost upwards of $200 million. And that's assuming we could even achieve comparable performance, which no one in the industry has managed to do. Call their bluff. It's not a bluff. The clause is clear. I had outside counsel review it an hour ago. It's airtight. Gregory signed it. The board ratified it. It's been in effect for 23 years. Richard's jaw tightens. He puts the document down. Who is this woman? Patricia looks at him with something that might be disbelief. You don't know who she is.
Stand up.
She's a new hire that James Chen brought in. Some diversity recruitment.
Clean out your desk.
Richard, Patricia's voice drops. That woman is Dr. Nadine Carter. She is the daughter of Dr. Marcus Carter, the man who invented every piece of technology this company is built on. She holds a doctorate in electrical engineering from Stanford. She has 4 published papers on advanced substrate design. She co-authored a paper with her father when she was 17 years old. She is the sole owner of Carter Applied Sciences and every patent in his portfolio. She is, by any objective measure, the most important person in this company's ecosystem. And you fired her on her first day because you didn't bother to learn who she was. The silence that follows is the kind that has weight, the kind you can feel pressing against your chest. Richard Ashworth sits behind his desk in his leather chair on the 14th floor of a building that is suddenly, terrifyingly, built on nothing. By Wednesday morning, the board of directors has been convened for an emergency session. 12 people sit around a long mahogany table in the 32nd floor conference room, a room with floor-to-ceiling windows that look out over Austin's skyline, a view that suddenly feels less like a symbol of achievement and more like a reminder of how far there is to fall. Richard Ashworth sits at the head of the table. He has not slept. His eyes are red-rimmed. The collar of his shirt is slightly creased, which for Richard Ashworth is the equivalent of showing up in pajamas. Patricia Voss presents the situation in clinical detail. She projects the licensing agreement on the screen. She highlights paragraph 14, subsection C. She shows the termination notice. She displays a spreadsheet listing every active contract that will be affected, every product line that will be halted, every legal liability that will cascade outward like dominoes falling in slow motion. The numbers are staggering. $412 million in active contracts, $217 million in projected revenue for the next fiscal year, an estimated $300 million in penalties for breach of contract with clients who have built their own products around Helion's technology. The Department of Defense contract alone carries a termination penalty of $78 million. One board member, a woman named Helen Cross, who has been on the board for 15 years, asks the obvious question: what exactly happened? Patricia defers to James Chen, who has been brought in to provide context. James stands. He speaks carefully, precisely, without embellishment. He describes Nadine's arrival. He describes Richard's entrance into the Advanced Materials Division. He describes the confrontation word by word, including the DEI comment, the face-down photograph, the order to clean out her desk, the instruction to erase her from the system. When he finishes, the room is quiet. Helen Cross looks at Richard Ashworth. Did you know who she was? No. Did you ask? It wasn't. Did you ask, Richard? No. Did you review her credentials? No. Did you read her file? No. Did you speak to James, to HR, to anyone at all before you walked into that room and fired the most important person in our supply chain? Richard doesn't answer. He looks at the table. The surface is mahogany, polished to a mirror finish, and in it, he can see a distorted reflection of his own face, a face that is beginning to understand the magnitude of what he has done. Helen Cross turns to Patricia. Can we fix this? Patricia shakes her head slowly. I've contacted Carter Applied Sciences attorney, a man named David Whitfield. He's a patent litigation specialist out of Washington, D.C. He informed me that, Dr. Carter has no interest in renegotiating the license at this time. He also informed me that Dr. Carter has already received inquiries from 3 competing firms interested in licensing the Carter portfolio. The room absorbs this information like a body absorbs a blow. What are our options? Another board member asks. Patricia pulls up a slide. Option 1. We develop alternative technology in-house. Timeline, 4 to 6 years. Cost, $200 million minimum. Viability, uncertain. Option 2. We license alternative substrate technology from a competitor. No current alternative achieves comparable performance. Option 3. We convince Dr. Carter to reinstate the license. And how do we do that? I don't know, Patricia says, but I know how we don't do it. We don't do it by sending the man who called her a diversity hire. Richard Ashworth calls Nadine Carter's attorney at 11:15 a.m. on Wednesday. David Whitfield answers on the second ring. Mr. Ashworth, I've been expecting your call. I'd like to speak with Dr. Carter directly. Dr. Carter has no interest in speaking with you directly. This is a business matter. It became a personal matter when you told her to clean out her desk, Mr. Ashworth, when you implied that her only value was as a demographic checkbox, when you placed her father's photograph face down on her desk. These are personal matters. Richard grips the phone. His knuckles are white. What does she want? Dr. Carter doesn't want anything from you. That's what you don't seem to understand. She doesn't need Helion Technologies. Helion Technologies needs her. Her father spent 20 years making sure that was the case, because he understood that the moment a company no longer needs you is the moment they stop treating you like a human being. He built protections into that agreement precisely because he feared this moment, and you proved him right. I'm prepared to offer a new licensing agreement, significantly improved terms, additional compensation. Mr. Ashworth, you fired a black woman with a doctorate from Stanford on her first day of work without reading her file, without reviewing her credentials, without speaking to a single person about her qualifications. You took one look at her and decided she didn't belong, and now you want to negotiate? Dr. Carter's father built the technology that made your company possible. Dr. Carter herself has innovations that could extend your product advantage by another decade. You had access to the most valuable mind in your industry, and you threw her out because she didn't match the picture in your head of what a Helion Technologies employee should look like. There is no licensing agreement that fixes that. There is no dollar amount that erases that. Richard hangs up. He sits in his office for a long time. The Austin skyline glitters through his window. Below, in the parking lot, employees arrive and leave, unaware that the ground beneath them is dissolving. By Thursday, the story has leaked. Someone inside the boardroom, nobody will ever determine who, contacts a reporter at the Austin American-Statesman. The headline runs, Thursday afternoon. Helion Technologies CEO fires patent holder's daughter on first day. Company faces existential crisis. By Thursday evening, the story has been picked up by Reuters, Bloomberg, and TechCrunch. By Friday morning, it's on CNN. The narrative is irresistible. A $4 billion company built on the genius of a black engineer, a daughter who inherited her father's legacy, a CEO who looked at her and saw nothing worth keeping. The internet responds the way the internet always does, with the speed and force of a river breaking through a dam. The hashtag #HerFather'sPatent trends on Twitter for 18 consecutive hours. LinkedIn posts from industry leaders condemn Helion's leadership. A video surfaces recorded by Sarah Park, the junior engineer who mouthed, "I'm sorry," as Nadine left, showing the moment Richard Ashworth enters the Advanced Materials Division. The audio is muffled but audible. You can hear him say, "Diversity Initiative." You can hear him say, "Clean out your desk." You can hear the silence of 14 people who witnessed something they knew was wrong and didn't know how to stop it. The video reaches 12 million views in 48 hours. Helion stock drops 19% in pre-market trading on Friday. By market close, it has fallen 23%. Trading is halted twice due to volatility. The company's market capitalization loses over $900 million in a single day. Richard Ashworth releases a statement through the company's PR department. It uses words like misunderstanding and regrettable and committed to diversity and inclusion. It does not contain an apology. It does not mention Nadine Carter by name. It does not acknowledge that the CEO of a $4 billion company fired someone without knowing who she was because her skin color told him everything he thought he needed to know. The statement makes things worse. The internet does not forgive carefully worded non-apologies. A second hashtag emerges, name her Richard. By Friday evening, 3 of Helion's 14 major clients have issued statements expressing concern about the company's leadership and requesting meetings to discuss the status of their contracts. The Department of Defense contract, worth $240 million over 5 years, is placed under formal review. Gregory Ashworth calls his brother on Friday night. Gregory is 63 years old. He lives in a single-story house in Cedar Park, north of Austin, with a nurse who helps him manage the lingering effects of his stroke. His speech is slower now, more deliberate, but his mind is sharp. He watched the news coverage from his living room, sitting in the armchair where he reads every evening, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years, the specific, crushing disappointment of watching someone destroy something you built. You need to resign, Richard. I'm not resigning. You will resign, or the board will remove you. Helen Cross has already called me. She has the votes. This is my company. It was never your company. It was our company. And before that, it was Marcus Carter's technology. You inherited a seat at a table that someone else built, and you flipped it over because you didn't like who was sitting across from you. Richard is silent. I went to Marcus Carter's garage 23 years ago, Gregory continues. I sat with him for 3 hours. He showed me things I had never seen, things no one had seen. And you know what I remember most? His daughter. She was 6 years old. She was sitting on the floor sorting components into piles, resistors by color, capacitors by size. 6 years old, Richard. And Marcus looked at her and said, "She's going to be better than me." He was right. She is better than him. She improved on 3 of his core designs before she finished her doctorate. She has innovations in her notebooks that could revolutionize the industry, and you looked at her and saw nothing. I made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake. A mistake is a miscalculation, a typo, a wrong turn. What you did was reveal who you are. And who you are is someone who should not be running a company that was built on the principle that genius doesn't have a color. Gregory hangs up. It is the last conversation the 2 brothers will have for 7 months. Nadine Carter sits in her hotel room in Austin on Saturday morning. She hasn't left the room in 2 days. The curtains are drawn. Her laptop is open on the bed, but she isn't looking at it. She is looking at her father's photograph, the one she carried in his bag, the one Richard Ashworth placed face down on her desk like it was nothing, like it was clutter, like the man in the picture hadn't changed the world from a garage in Richmond, Virginia. Her phone has been ringing constantly. Reporters, investors, attorneys, competitors. She has spoken to none of them. She has spoken only to David Whitfield and to her mother, Evelyn, who called from Richmond and said, "Baby, your father knew this day might come. That's why he built it the way he did. He built it so you would never have to beg." Nadine thinks about begging. She thinks about what it means to stand in a room where you are the smartest person present and be told to leave because someone has decided in a glance that you have nothing to offer. She thinks about every black woman who has stood in that room, in rooms like it, in conference rooms and classrooms and boardrooms and operating rooms, and been told to leave. She thinks about the ones who didn't have a patent portfolio, the ones who didn't have a licensing clause, the ones who had nothing but their dignity and were stripped of even that. Her phone rings again. She looks at the caller ID. It's James Chen. She answers. "Nadine, I know you don't owe us anything. I know you don't owe me anything, but I need to tell you something." "Go ahead." "The team, the engineers and advanced materials. After you left, after Richard left, Sarah Park stood up and said she wanted to file a formal complaint. And then David Walsh stood up and said the same thing. And then Maria Gutierrez. And then Tom Hendricks. All 14 of us. We filed a joint complaint with HR documenting everything Richard said and did. Margaret Holloway in HR has been documenting the pattern. This isn't the first time, Nadine. He's done this before. 3 other employees in the past 2 years. All people of color. All pushed out within their first month. Yours was just the fastest. The most blatant. Nadine closes her eyes. Why didn't anyone stop it before? James is quiet for a moment. Because we were afraid. Because he's the CEO. Because the system protects people like him. and punishes people like us for speaking up. But you didn't need the system to protect you. Your father made sure of that. And when we saw you walk out with your head up and your father's bag on your shoulder, something changed. We realized that if you could walk out of that building with that kind of dignity, the least we could do was stand up inside of it. Nadine opens her eyes. She looks at her father's face in the photograph, that grin, that knowing. Thank you, James. What are you going to do? She thinks for a long time. She thinks about her father's words. She thinks about her mother's words. She thinks about 14 engineers who stood up. She thinks about the 3 people who came before her, the ones who were pushed out quietly, without patents, without leverage, without anyone filing a joint complaint on their behalf. I'm going to do what my father would have done, she says. I'm going to build something better. The board of directors removes Richard Ashworth as CEO of Helion Technologies on Monday, October 21st, exactly 1 week after Nadine Carter was fired. The vote is 11-1. The single dissenting vote is Richard's own, cast as a formality, a final act of defiance by a man who still believes he was right. Helen Cross is appointed interim CEO. Her first official act is to issue a public apology, a real one, that names Nadine Carter, acknowledges the racism that motivated her termination, identifies the 3 previous employees who were similarly pushed out, and offers them compensation and the opportunity to return, and announces a comprehensive review of the company's hiring, retention, and leadership practices. Her second official act is to call David Whitfield and request a meeting with Dr. Carter. Whitfield calls Nadine. They want to meet. Helen Cross, not Richard. She seems genuine. What does she want? She wants to discuss reinstating the license. She's prepared to offer significantly improved terms. She's also prepared to offer you a position, Senior Vice President of Research and Development, reporting directly to the CEO, with full autonomy over the Advanced Materials Division. I don't want a title they're giving me because they're scared. I told her that. She said, and I'm quoting, "Tell Dr. Carter that I'm not offering her a title because I'm scared. I'm offering her a title because she's the most qualified person for the job, and the fact that it took a crisis for us to recognize that is our shame, not her burden." Nadine is quiet. She thinks about her father. She thinks about the garage in Richmond. She thinks about the substrate architecture that changed an industry, built by a black man with a secondhand fax machine and a daughter who sorted resistors on the floor. She thinks about what it means to build something, not just technology, not just patents, but systems, structures, legacies that outlast the people who create them. I'll meet with her, Nadine says, but I have conditions. Name them. First, the license agreement will be restructured. Carter Applied Sciences will retain full ownership of all patents, current and future. The licensing terms will include a mandatory review every 3 years, with independent oversight. Second, Helion Technologies will establish a foundation, funded at 5% of annual net revenue, dedicated to supporting underrepresented engineers and scientists. The foundation will be named after my father, the Marcus Carter Foundation for Engineering Excellence. Third, the 3 employees who were pushed out before me will be contacted, offered full back pay, and given the opportunity to return to positions of their choosing within the company. Fourth, every member of the Advanced Materials Division who filed the joint complaint will receive formal recognition and protection from retaliation. Specifically, Sarah Park will be promoted to team lead within 6 months based on her qualifications. Fifth, Richard Ashworth will not receive a severance package that exceeds the median annual salary of a Helion Technologies employee. He doesn't get to profit from being held accountable. David Whitfield is silent for a moment. Nadine, some of these conditions are going to be very difficult for them to accept. My father built their company from a garage. They can manage difficult. The meeting takes place on Wednesday, October 23rd, in a conference room on the 32nd floor of Helion Technologies. Nadine Carter walks into the building she was escorted out of 9 days earlier. This time, she walks through the front door, and Tanya at the reception desk stands up. Not because anyone told her to, because she has watched the news, because she has read the stories, because she understands now who walked through her lobby 9 days ago and was given a visitor badge. "Dr. Carter," Tanya says, "welcome back." Nadine nods. She is wearing her father's leather messenger bag. The brass clasp is still tarnished. The strap is still worn soft. Inside the bag, along with her laptop and a folder containing her conditions, is the same framed photograph. She takes the elevator to the 32nd floor. Helen Cross meets her at the elevator doors. Helen is 61 years old, silver-haired, direct, a former engineer herself who left the lab for the boardroom 20 years ago, and has spent every day since trying to make sure the boardroom doesn't forget where the real work happens. She extends her hand. "Dr. Carter, thank you for coming. Thank you for asking properly." They sit across from each other at the mahogany table. Patricia Voss is present. David Whitfield is present. James Chen is present. The meeting lasts 4 hours. Every one of Nadine's conditions is discussed. Some are accepted immediately. Others require negotiation. The 5% foundation funding is reduced to 3% for the first 2 years, then escalates to 5% in year 3. Richard Ashworth's severance package is capped at $62,000, the median salary of a Helion Technologies employee. Sarah Park's promotion timeline is accelerated to 3 months. The 3 former employees are contacted that same afternoon. 2 of them accept the invitation to return. The third, a man named Derek Williams, who was pushed out 14 months earlier and has since started his own consulting firm, declines the position but accepts the back pay and asks that his portion be donated to the Marcus Carter Foundation. At the end of the meeting, Helen Cross slides a document across the table. It is the new licensing agreement, revised according to Nadine's conditions, ready for signature. Nadine reads every page. She reads paragraph 14, subsection C, which now includes additional protections, additional oversight, additional guarantees that what happened to her will not happen to anyone else. She picks up a pen. She pauses. She looks at James Chen, who is watching her with an expression that carries the weight of 23 years of someone else's genius running through his hands. She looks at Helen Cross, who is sitting very still, very upright, like a woman who understands that this moment is not about business. It is about whether a company deserves to survive. She looks at the photograph in her bag, visible through the open flap, her father's face, that grin, that knowing. She signs the agreement. The pen she uses belonged to her father. He used it to sign the original agreement with Gregory Ashworth 23 years ago, sitting in a garage in Richmond, Virginia, with a 3-year-old sorting resistors on the floor. 6 months later, Helion Technologies reports its strongest quarterly earnings in 5 years. The stock has not only recovered, but surpassed its pre-crisis high by 11%. The Advanced Materials Division, now led by Nadine Carter as Senior Vice President of Research and Development, has filed 4 new patents based on innovations she developed at Stanford, innovations she carried in her notebooks when she walked through the door on October 14th, innovations that Richard Ashworth never bothered to ask about. The Marcus Carter Foundation awards its first round of grants to 12 young engineers from underrepresented backgrounds. The ceremony is held in Richmond, Virginia, in a community center 3 blocks from the garage where Marcus Carter filed his first patent. Evelyn Carter, Nadine's mother, stands at the podium and tells the story of a man who built a revolution with a soldering iron and a dream. She tells the story of a daughter who protected that dream with quiet, unshakable dignity. She does not mention Richard Ashworth by name. She doesn't need to. Sarah Park is promoted to team lead of the Substrate Development Group in January, 2 months ahead of schedule. Her first project results in a 7% improvement in thermal efficiency across Helion's primary product line. When the results are announced, James Chen sends Nadine a 1-line email. "Your father would be proud." Nadine reads the email at her desk on the 7th floor next to the window, where a framed photograph sits beside her monitor. A man in a garage, holding a circuit board in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other, grinning like someone who knows something the world hasn't figured out yet. She reads the email and she thinks about paragraph 14, subsection C. She thinks about a clause written 23 years ago by a man who understood that the most powerful technology in the world is worthless if the people who create it aren't protected. She thinks about what it means to build something that lasts, not just circuits, not just patents, but dignity. The kind of dignity that doesn't depend on someone else's recognition. The kind that exists whether or not anyone is watching. The kind that a man can pass to his daughter in a leather bag with a tarnished clasp, and she can carry it into any room in the world. Richard Ashworth is last seen in a LinkedIn profile, updated 3 months after his removal. His new title is Independent Consultant. His profile has no endorsements. His network, once 1,700 connections strong, has shrunk to 400. He never makes a public statement about what happened. He never apologizes. He never acknowledges that he looked at a woman who held the key to everything he had and saw nothing worth keeping. But every quarter, when Helion Technologies releases its earnings report, his name appears in the historical record as a footnote. The CEO, who almost destroyed a $4 billion company in a single morning because he couldn't see past his own reflection. Have you ever been judged before anyone bothered to learn your name? Have you ever walked into a room knowing you belonged and been told to leave by someone who didn't know what they were looking at? Have you ever carried something your parents built, something precious, something irreplaceable, and had someone treat it like it was nothing? Think about that. Think about how many Nadine Carters walk into buildings every day carrying genius in their bags and are handed visitor badges instead of keys. Think about how many Marcus Carters are working in garages right now, building things the world will depend on and will never receive the recognition they deserve until someone tries to take it away. This isn't just Nadine's story. It's a story about what we lose when we let people like Richard Ashworth decide who belongs. It's a story about the cost of assumptions, measured not in hurt feelings, but in hundreds of millions of dollars, in lost innovation, in talent that walks out the door because someone couldn't see past the color of a person's skin. Share the story, not because it has a happy ending, but because it almost didn't. Because for every Nadine Carter who had a patent clause to protect her, there are thousands who had nothing but their dignity, and that wasn't enough. Subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell, because these stories need to be told, and they need to be heard, and they need to matter to someone beyond the people who lived them. And the next time you see someone walk into a room carrying a bag that looks a little worn, with a clasp that's a little tarnished, remember, you have no idea what's inside it.